Thank you so much for joining us for part 2 of our presentation on a brief overview of special education. Now, last time we talked about IDEA. We talked about how IDEA gets implemented down to the local level, as well as who is responsible for each piece of IDEA. Then we went into some detail on what steps are included, and we talked about child find and referrals, evaluations, and eligibility. So today we're going to take up from that point and we're going to talk about IEP team meetings. We're going to talk about who is involved in the IEP team. We're also going to talk about where you can go to get additional information beyond what's in these presentations. So let's jump right in on what is an IEP. Well, an IEP is an abbreviation for an individualized education program. This is a very unique plan that's created specifically for your child to meet their academic and functional needs. Remember that everyone who qualifies and who is eligible for special education services is required under IDEA to have an IEP. Under IDEA, you are also required under early intervention services to have an IFSP, or an individualized family services plan. And that's for our kiddos that are age 0 to 3. In the next few slides, we are going to talk about who is part of that IEP team and what is included in the IEP that gets written. All right, so let's first talk about who gets involved as the IEP team. Well, under IDEA, they are required to include parents. Notice that you are number 1 on the list. It's highly important that you're involved in this process to the greatest extent possible because no one knows your child better than you. We also need to include a special education teacher, someone who's very familiar with the special education curriculum. We need to include a regular education teacher, someone who is extremely familiar with the regular education curriculum and how that works in that particular school. We need to include a district representative. And this is somebody who is very familiar with the general education curriculum, as well as is very familiar with the resources that are available in the district and can actually delve those resources, put those resources in place for your child's IEP team meeting. And then lastly, we need to include someone who can go over the evaluation results. That is typically the school psychologist. So they're going to be able to talk to you in detail about what the evaluation is really saying that your child needs from an academic and functional standpoint. Now, those are the required members of the team, but there could also be other members that are included. First of all, your child could be included. And remember that as your child gets older, it will actually be required that your child attends the IEP meetings as we're working on transition to adulthood. And in Georgia, that starts at age 14. But up until then, you may want to have your child join the IEP meeting and sit through as much of it as you think that child can take, just so that they start getting involved in the decisions that are being made about their educational future. The principal may also be invited, or assistant principal, and there may be others, such as you could decide that you need a relative that spends a lot of time with your child who might be able to add some information to the meeting. You might decide that it would be appropriate for your child's Sunday school teacher to be there, or perhaps a Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop leader, or maybe even a camp counselor that has worked in detail with your child and might be able to add some insight into how your child learns and what has worked best with him or her in the past. So let's talk a little bit about what an IEP team meeting is. First of all, the school staff is required to invite the team members. That is their job, not yours, and they'll be invited in writing. They're required to tell you in advance what the time and the place are, and to set a time and a place where you're able to attend. And if you're not able to attend, it's okay to say to them, I can't come that day. Can you find another date that would work with my schedule, and perhaps give them some alternates that might work. They're going to tell you the purpose of the meeting, and they're going to tell you who will be there. There's going to be a list of people that can be there. Now, one of the things that you can do if you're not able to be at the meeting is you can actually participate by phone. Now, it's highly recommended that you participate in person if you're at all able to, because you're just able to make better connections with people in person than you are over the phone. And please remember that this is a team that you're probably going to be working with for a very long time. So you want to develop a good relationship early on. All right, so let's go into what is an IEP. Some of the things that are going to be discussed in the meeting. We're going to look at your child's strengths and abilities. We're going to look at your concerns for your child. So there is a section in the IEP that specifically talks about parental concerns. And this is the place for you to tell them, here's what I am concerned with for my child. Here is what I would like to see happen through the IEP process, and any other information that you feel might be pertinent that the team should know as they're looking to develop goals and objectives for your child for the upcoming school year. Another thing that will be included is the evaluation results and also what your child needs in order to learn. So we're not just going to look at your child's strengths, but we're also going to look at the academic and functional needs that your child has. We're going to look at different school services that are going to be provided, and we're going to look at any special factors that need to be considered when we're putting the IEP together for your child. Now, some of those factors might include looking at behavior. There could be some behavioral issues that are hindering your child from learning. We're going to look at if there's a limited English proficiency. Obviously, that could cause problems in your child's ability to learn. We're going to look if there's any kind of a blindness or visual impairment with your child that could be hindering learning, as well as any kind of communication needs or deafness that might be hindering your child. And then we're finally going to look at assistive technology. And is there any kind of assistive technology out there that could be beneficial in helping your child learn in a better way? So we're really going to look at two big things. We're going to look at their academic needs, but in addition, their functional needs. And what are functional needs? Functional needs can include things like their ability to dress and feed themselves. That can become an issue in the educational environment, for instance, during lunchtime in the cafeteria, or when there is a time to use the bathroom or restroom. Those types of things need to be considered when we're writing the IEP for your child. Okay, so there's also something else that's included in the IEP that are called related services. And what are they really? What are related services? Well, they are developmental, corrective, and other supportive services that are going to help your child be successful in their learning environment. And some of the things that they can include are speech and language services, audiology services, interpreting services, physical or occupational therapy services. It can include recreation services, counseling services if they're needed, and one of the big ones is transportation, and that's usually something that is heavily considered in any IEP, whether or not your child needs to receive special transportation in order to get to and from the school environment. And remember that this IEP is developed with two big things in mind. The first thing is it's developed to meet your child's unique needs and your child's unique abilities. And that's why we call it individualized, because no two plans should really look alike. The second thing that it's going to do is it's going to help your child advance appropriately toward meeting their annual goals. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is placement. Now, back in the first section of this, we talked about how special education is not a place. They're actually services that are provided to your children, and they can be provided in many places. It's not a classroom, it's not a hallway. They can be provided in lots of different environments that will help meet your child's educational needs. So first, the team is going to look at the IEP goals and services that are based on the child's needs. Then they're going to look at where can those goals and needs be best met. And we're going to look at the least restrictive environment that your child can be put in order for them to be successful. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the least restrictive environment. And what is that really? Well, it means that services must be provided in the general education setting as much as possible. So let's talk about how IDEA defines the least restrictive environment. We're going to read directly from IDEA. They define it as, to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities are educated with children who are not disabled. So hopefully this means that your child is being educated in their home school, in the area that your neighborhood is in, and with children that are the same age as your child. That's always the goal. Now, the first thing they're going to look at is, can your child be successful in the general education environment when we provide the support and services that they need in that general education environment? If that isn't the case, then they will look at other placements that can be considered. But the goal is still that we provide as much interaction as possible with that child's typical peers. And that can happen during lunch or PE or many other areas during the day. So let's talk about the continuum that the IEP team is going to look at. First of all, the general education environment. What are some supports that can be provided in the general education environment? Well, we talked a lot about different support services on a couple of slides ago. They can provide personnel like paraprofessionals or interpreters if that's going to help your child be successful. We can also look at direct special education services being provided in the general education classroom. Consultative services, we can look at collaborative services and co-teaching services. Any of those can be provided in the general education classroom to allow your child to stay in that setting and be among his or her typical peers. Now, consultative services, so that you understand that, means that one class period per month, that professional is going to work with your child, and the rest of the time they're going to be consulting with the teacher to give them ideas and ways that they can interact with your child that will be more successful. From a collaborative or co-teaching standpoint, that means that they're actually in the general ed environment for either the whole class period or a portion of that class period, working in conjunction with the general ed teacher to help provide the services that your child needs. And that can be highly successful as well. So if we've considered all those options, then it's just not possible for your child to be in the general education environment, then what are some other options where these services can be provided? They can be provided in special education pull-out classes, where they go to a different room in order to receive the services. They can be provided in special schools. There are situations where we have academies for blind students and for deaf students, where they can be highly successful, and those are considered special schools in the state of Georgia. We can look at home instruction if that's more important for your child to be at home to receive that. We can look at hospital and homebound services. For many of our children with disabilities, their medical needs are very significant and they're very fragile, where they're not able to attend in a school setting. So school resources can be supplied in the hospital as well as in a homebound situation. We can also look at residential services, where a child is served in a residential facility. Now, when it comes to preschool services, we can look at different placements with that as well. We can look at a general education childhood program, and that can be public or private. It can be some of our programs like Head Start, our Georgia Pre-K. It can also be in private preschools. We also can look at a separate special education program in a school or provided in a community situation. And finally, we can provide those services in a home situation where the child is in their natural environment, and that is a natural learning environment for them. So that's a little bit about least restrictive environment. Now, one of the big things to remember is, let's flip back and remember in the first presentation what the goal really was behind IDEA. The goal is to help children prepare to lead a productive and independent adult life to the maximum extent possible. So we want them to be able to go on to further education, to go on to employment, and to go on to an independent living. So it's important to step back. A lot of times we get very involved in what are the goals and what are the objectives that we're writing for that child to help them today. But it's also very important to take a step back and look at the big picture. Has this IEP that you've written really taken a step toward helping your child reach those goals of being independent for life. And if it hasn't, then maybe it's time to reevaluate some of the pieces that are in the IEP. Now, what happens if we get through this entire process and you really just don't agree with some of the decisions that have been made by the team, or perhaps you've even felt a little bit overwhelmed and outnumbered and a little bit alone? So let's talk about what happens when we just disagree at this stage. Maybe we disagree on placement, or we disagree on some of the services that are being provided to meet your child's needs. The first thing to remember is at every IEP meeting and at many other times during the course of your child's educational school years, you are going to be given a copy of your parental rights. So it's really important to get familiar with your parental rights and to take a look at what some of your protections are under IDEA, because you do have many. So usually if there's going to be a disagreement, it is going to be about placement and services. And typically the ones that are the most difficult to resolve are ones about placement, that we just don't agree with where the team thinks the least restrictive environment is for your child. And those are usually the most difficult to resolve. From a personal standpoint, I have experience in this area. When my daughter was 5 years old, we had her in a private preschool as well as a public preschool, and we really felt it was important for her to go into a regular education kindergarten class, and we really felt that she could be successful in that environment, especially based on the information that came out in the IEP meeting. And we had brought reports from her private preschool teacher, her occupational therapist, her speech therapist, and all of them felt like really Lauren could be successful in the general ed environment in kindergarten. But the team didn't agree with this. And the team actually consisted of 17 different members, and it was just my husband and I at the meeting saying that it should be general ed. So we had a big disagreement in that, and we could not resolve it no matter how hard we tried. So my husband and I actually looked at our parental rights and decided that we would try dispute resolution. And we went to the county and laid out our side of it and explained why we felt that our daughter could be successful in general ed. And based on the information, it really looked like she was kind of on the bubble, that she could be successful in either environment. When that's the case, we need to look at what the least restrictive environment is, and that's a general education setting. And so we actually won in dispute resolution, and my daughter was able to attend a general education kindergarten class, and she was very successful in there. So keep in mind that you really can utilize your rights, and it can come out many times in your favor. But what are some of the steps that you need to go through? If you would disagree with something in the IEP, you need to do it in writing. Remember that everything in the process should be done in writing so that there is a paper trail of what has gone on. You need to be very specific about why you feel like this is not a good decision for your child, whether it be about placement or the services that are being provided in it. And the important thing is to try to reach an agreement. It's really important to remain calm. Many times this becomes a very emotional situation. You're dealing with your child, of course you're going to be emotional. But it's really important to remain calm and try to be as professional as possible. Make the team understand that you're really interested in working together as opposed to just fighting with them about these particular issues that you can't agree on. Try when you're putting your letter together to step away for a couple of days. Let it sit. Let someone read it that's not involved, maybe a friend or a relative. And let them tell you if you need to remove some emotion out of it so that it comes across very calm and professional. This is how you're going to be the most successful with your team. And the important thing to remember is that you are going to be dealing with this team for a very long time. It's a very long relationship. So it's important that we try to resolve it in a professional and calm manner. So typically they will call a meeting to try to come to an agreement between you with the reasons that you've given and try between the team to come up with a resolution that works for everybody. Make sure that you're prepared when that meeting happens. Make sure that you have in mind some kind of a proposed solution of what you think might work better for your child and have the reasons behind that spelled out pretty clearly. Make sure you bring data and reports that support your reasoning for why you think it should be different than what the team has decided. You might even ask other people to attend with you or perhaps to write reports, like what my husband and I did when we had our speech therapist and our occupational therapist both write reports. Our pediatrician wrote a report, our private preschool teacher wrote a report, and a couple of them even attended the meeting with me. So it's a really good idea to have some people there that are going to support you and that are also going to give you backup on why the team should reconsider their decision. And we really need to focus on solutions for the future. Now, what if we've done all that and it still doesn't work? Then it's really important to remember to use your rights. Take a look at the rights and take a look at the different steps that you can go through to try to resolve this situation, because you are your child's best advocate. And it's important that you do what you feel is right for your child. All right, so what have we learned through these two presentations that we've given? We took a look at what special education is, and we defined it based on IDEA and what IDEA says it is. We looked at the basic components of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. We looked at the different pieces of that and who owns those different pieces in the state of Georgia. And we looked at how the process works in the state of Georgia. We looked at child find, at referrals, at evaluations and eligibility. And we have also looked at IEP teams, meetings, what it involves, what is included, and how do we resolve disputes when we come to that. And we've also talked a little bit about where to go for more information. But what if you get through these two presentations and you still feel like you need more information? Where is it that you can go? Well, you can certainly rewatch these videos and see if it answers some of your questions. But you can also contact Parent to Parent of Georgia. And if you haven't heard of Parent to Parent, it's a statewide organization. We have offices across the state of Georgia. We have a toll-free number, 1-800-229-2038, where you can reach us. And remember that anytime you call, you are going to reach a parent of a child with a disability. We do have people who speak Spanish, and we can arrange for translation into a number of other languages if that's something that you need in order to get your problem resolved. We can also deal with all disabilities and all different healthcare needs. I think two of the things that make us really unique is that we cross all disabilities. There's lots of great support organizations out there for things like Down syndrome and autism and cerebral palsy and whatnot. Great organizations out there. One of the things that makes Parent to Parent unique is that we cross all disabilities and all healthcare needs. Another thing that makes us unique is a lot of times you have organizations that only deal with children, and so they'll deal with a child until they're age 18. Our organization goes beyond that, and we actually deal with the ages of 0 to 26. So there can be slight transition into adulthood when there's still kind of a back and forth with your child on what their needs are. What are some of the things that Parent to Parent can provide for you? Well, I just want to highlight a few that I think could be very useful for you. The first thing that we have is a special needs database. We have over 5,000 resources in over 140 categories for you. So let's just take an example. Perhaps you're looking for a daycare who could help your child with special needs in a specific area across Atlanta or the state of Georgia. You can actually put that search information into our database, and it will give you a list of information of those resources that would be appropriate for you. We can also provide that through our 1-800 number. If you would prefer that we do the search for you, you can give us your information. We'll do the search for you, and we will provide you with those different resources that can help you with your situation. We also, on our website, have a very user-friendly system. It's called Roadmap to Services, and when you click on it, you're going to come to this very easy-to-navigate picture that includes things like a hospital if you need medical needs, a courthouse if you need legal types of information, and a school building if you need school type information, so that it makes it very, very easy to navigate, because it can be very overwhelming, all of the different things that a parent needs to know and needs to understand when it comes to a child with a disability. The last thing I want to highlight is supporting parents, which is really how our organization got started way back in 1980. And what that can do for you is you can call our 1-800 number and say, I really need some emotional support in this journey that I have with my child. And what Parent to Parent will do is they will search their database and they will find a parent who's perhaps on that same journey that you're on. Like in my situation, my child was diagnosed with autism. So they would match me with a parent who also has a child with autism who's maybe a little further along in their journey. Maybe their child is a little older than mine, or maybe they've gotten their diagnosis and had it for a longer time than I have, and they're more familiar with what's available in my community, what's available through different resources and whatnot, and where to go for information. And that parent can meet with you for coffee or in whatever kind of environment is appropriate and help you with those emotional needs that are definitely going to be a part of anyone's journey. We have lots of other assistance, including free training courses like the one you're seeing today. So I want to really thank you for joining us for these 2 trainings on a brief overview of special education. And I invite you to listen to some of our other presentations as well as these again if you need assistance, or please call Parent to Parent of Georgia. Thank you for joining us.